Welcome to Georgia State's Data Handling Training. This training has been developed and created by Georgia State's Data Governance Program. Let's get started. Who is the intended audience for this training? The intended audience includes all Georgia State employees who handle or oversee institutional record-level data and/or access reports, analyses, dashboards, and visualizations that detail sensitive topics. The primary objective of this training is to empower all university employees who handle institutional data. For example, data on students, faculty, and staff, and to provide you with the best practices for accessing, storing, and sharing data ethically, securely, and in alignment with federal and state regulations, as well as university policies and procedures. Finally, we'll provide you with several resources regarding data handling. Before we delve in, let's take a moment to explore these two questions. Why this training, and what data exactly? Each day, we provide data to others through our various activities of daily living. We do so through our browser history, our financial transactions, and even our Netflix history. Here at Georgia State, we collect and store a large amount of data on students, faculty, and staff, our facilities, and our operations. It is a privilege to handle, review, report on, and/or analyze individual data, regardless of whether the data are institutional data, survey data, or data collected for the purposes of research. Technology today makes it easier than ever to combine data sources. For example, we can combine student academic data with housing data. It is also possible to track students beyond graduation by linking institutional data with IRS tax returns or the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. But is it ethical? And if we decide it is, do we need to notify people that their data are being used in such a way? Or do we need to let them know who will be able to view, access, or delete their data? The USG IT Handbook, Section 5.2, details the appropriate usage standard, and I encourage you to read the 2 to 3 pages to ensure you're familiar with the standard in its entirety. For the purposes of handling data and this training, I want to highlight two guiding principles. Number one, respect the privacy and personal rights of others. And number two, protect data access, confidentiality, and integrity. I've mentioned institutional data, but what data am I referring to? Institutional data include data that are collected as well as calculated by the university and enable us to conduct our daily operations. For example, grades, GPA, and academic standing are institutional data, as are facility details, personnel information, and research grant details. With the growing focus on data, data governance's oversight may expand over time to include other types of data other than institutional data. Still, all data should be handled ethically and securely, where some data require extra protection, which we'll learn about in a moment. We'll begin with the fundamentals of data handling. Let's start with a question. Aren't all data the same? The answer is no. All data are not the same, nor should they be treated in the same manner. The three types of data we'll cover include PII, otherwise known as personally identifiable information. We'll also review the three data classifications and regulated data. Personally identifiable information includes the following: driver's license number, social security number, Panther ID, email address, and credit card number. You'll notice that with all of these examples, they uniquely identify an individual. Additionally, a combination of data points may also identify you or another individual. For example, the combination of birth date, sex, and state of residence. On their own, these data elements are not considered PII. However, data users want to be cognizant when sharing data and ask themselves, can the combination of data columns identify anyone? Georgia State classifies data into one of these three categories: unrestricted, public; sensitive, confidential. Let's delve into them. You access the university's data classification policy by going to gsu.policystat.edu and searching for the data classification policy, or clicking the link on the DataGov site under the Policies and Procedures area. Unrestricted data, according to the classification policy, includes information maintained by the university that is available for disclosure under the provisions of the Georgia Open Records Act or other applicable state or federal laws. To summarize, unrestricted data include directory information or building names or department names. Please note that Georgia State's campus directory information does not include student email address. If you'd like more details on university's directory information, please go to the university's registrar's website. The bulk of the university's data are categorized as sensitive. For example, you may know a department ID, but not everyone does, and we don't share it broadly or in the context of, say, budget allocation or a department ID. Many data elements at the university have been classified and are available in the university's business glossary, the Data Cookbook. You'll learn a little bit more about this resource later on. For now, please note that sensitive data include information maintained by the university that requires protection from unauthorized use, access, disclosure, modification, loss, or destruction. And finally, confidential data. PII is a great example of confidential data, and you see here that confidential data includes information maintained by the university that is restricted regarding access and disclosure, including implementing means for safeguarding private and proprietary information. Our purpose here is to make you aware of key federal and state regulations that affect data within higher education. If you'd like to review further information, you'll see this in the last slide on resources. But please note that there is FERPA training available on Stacks, and when one requests access to student accounts data, you'll receive a training on GLBA. In a nutshell, to review these regulations, FERPA includes everything in a student's record. GLBA covers student financial aid data. Open Records, there are limitations, but for the most part, it includes all data generated by the university, such as in our emails or in other communications and in files that we have, say, on OneDrive. The point here is that when you're handling any data that identifies students, and yes, that includes even pictures with names attached to them, you want to be certain that you know how to handle it. The same is true with financial aid data. If you require further details, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Office of Legal Affairs. Next, we'll move on to data access. Data access. You can access data either A, by gaining access to a data system, or B, through a data set. Let's review those now. A data system can be enterprise-wide, across several departments, or even local. Examples of enterprise-wide systems include our SIS, otherwise known as Banner, our financial reporting system, Spectrum, as well as the data warehouse. To access enterprise-wide systems, you'll want to be on a VPN, also known as a virtual private network, which is especially important when working remotely. Details on the primary reasons to access a specific system and who is eligible can be found on the DataGov website under the How Do I page. For systems that cross multiple departments or are local, you can go to the university's data cookbook and locate the data system owner in the data system list. Again, to ensure your session is secure, establish your VPN connection before accessing the system. Resources will be repeated at the end of this training. A data set is a subset of a data from a data system. For example, maybe you're looking for data on graduating seniors from the past 5 years who were honor students. In order to receive or gain access to a data set, you'll need to reach out to the data steward or stewards who is or are responsible for the data you are seeking. If you need details on what data are overseen by whom, you can consult the data cookbook for details if in fact you need those. Next, we'll move on to data storage. Earlier, I mentioned the appropriate use standard. I've excerpted a quote here. It is a violation to store protected or confidential information in unintended or unprotected locations. Now, this seems rather straightforward. However, in the course of a day, Georgia State employees have many competing needs and items to attend to. It is very easy to forget this when in a rush or the need to make it easier to store, say, on a thumb drive. However, please don't forget that behind many of these data points are people, students, who trust us to handle their data responsibly. Reminder: Georgia State managed computers are protected locations, and other locations are not protected according to university requirements. If you are uncertain if a data element is or a data set contains protected or confidential information, please consult the data cookbook for the element classification as well as the responsible data steward. Now we'll move on to data sharing. Georgia State, like other institutions of higher education, need to share its data with various units on campus in order to operate. One component of data governance is the stewardship of data. Georgia State's current data stewards are located on its site under the governance structure. One of the responsibilities of a data steward is to review data requests to data systems and data sets and ensures the requester has a legitimate need to access the data. Being granted access to record level data is a privilege, and if you need to share data with others, do not send it via email or put it on a thumb drive. Instead, use Sendafile to share data files that do not require maintenance. Alternatively, if you need to share and store data, use your Georgia State Dropbox, Teams, or SharePoint. All of these applications are approved applications by cybersecurity. And finally, before clicking send or posting to any of these applications, ensure permissions are set correctly and that those who will have access to the data have the proper approval from the relevant data steward or stewards to do so. When in doubt, ask the responsible data steward. Doing so, you respect the right of the individuals represented in the data file and the role of the data steward, who is ultimately responsible for the data in their purview. And finally, a few resources. Data are a university asset, and the objective of this training is to provide you with needed information when handling data. This training, however, is not your only resource. Please see the following web pages for FERPA training, GLBA training, biannual security training, the Data Cookbook, and the Data Governance Program website. Thank you for your participation.